Okay, then here we go. They say money makes the world go round. But in 2025, it's fighter jets making the markets twitch. Picture this. A pair of Venezuelan F-16s come screaming low over a US Navy destroyer, banking so tight that American sailors could count the rivets. The Pentagon calls it provocative. Wall Street calls it risk premium. I call it exactly what it is. A reminder that finance and firepower are married and you can't divorce the two. Most people scroll past headlines like this. Oh, just another dust-up down south. But here's the truth. A stunt like that is more than chest-thumping. It sets off a chain reaction that hits defense budgets, commodity prices, shipping routes, and yes, your wallet. So let's tear into it. The flyover on September 5th, Venezuelan F-16s buzzed the USS Jason Dunham in international waters. This wasn't a friendly wave. It happened just days after US forces sank a cartel-linked boat, killing 11 suspected smugglers. Caracas called it sovereignty. Washington called it reckless. Sailors on board called it a little too close for comfort. And in the background, markets quietly recalibrated risk. Now, the US didn't just shrug this off. Within hours, 10 F-35 stealth fighters were wheels down in Puerto Rico. Naval reinforcements shifted posture. Venezuela mobilized its own forces. The message was clear. The Caribbean isn't quiet water anymore. And when waters get loud, the cost of keeping trade moving explodes. Military theater, financial costs. Jets. Flying low over a destroyer isn't just posturing. It's an invoice. Think about the cost chain that unspools instantly. Fuel burn, readiness drills, munitions prepped, carrier repositioning. The US Navy doesn't pivot for free. Every time a pilot straps in, dollar signs ignite. And Venezuela? They're not burning fuel for fun either. Those F-16s may be vintage compared to 5th-gen stealth, but they still drink jet fuel like water. Caracas isn't flexing for YouTube clips. They're making a statement. We can make you spend. That's asymmetric finance warfare. Force the bigger power to bleed money just by showing up. Oil and the Caribbean factor. Now let's talk oil. Venezuela sits on some of the largest proven reserves on the planet. Sanctions and corruption choke their output. But every time they rattle the saber, oil markets twitch. Traders price in instability. Insurance companies jack premiums on tankers. Fuel costs ripple outward. It's not the Strait of Hormuz, where a single spark can spike global crude. But it doesn't have to be. In finance, perception is reality. If shipping companies think a region is unstable, they reroute. If insurers think a carrier might get buzzed or shadowed, they charge more. Every extra cent at sea shows up later on your grocery bill, your gas pump, your Amazon order. Historical echoes. We've seen this play before. Cold War Soviet pilots used to buzz US carriers in the Mediterranean, sometimes so close that wake turbulence rattled decks. It wasn't just dangerous, it was deliberate economic pressure. Make your rival respond. Force them to fly caps, burn fuel, and wear out equipment. Fast forward to the Red Sea in 2024. Houthis, firing missiles at US jets, cost the Navy over $1 billion in munitions in just months. 3 lost Hornets added $180 million more. That's the bill for asymmetric conflict. The weaker side spends peanuts to make the stronger side torch billions. Venezuela watched that playbook unfold in Yemen and decided to run their own version in the Caribbean. Why Venezuela? Why now? Here's the why. Caracas is cornered. Sanctions cripple its economy, oil revenues are volatile, and domestic unrest simmers. So, what do you do when you can't compete economically? You compete theatrically. You stage bold moves that don't change your GDP, but do change the way the world has to treat you. Buzzing a US destroyer isn't about sinking it. It's about forcing America to react, to spend, to posture, to commit. That translates to headlines, diplomatic capital, and leverage in negotiations. For Maduro, every dollar the US burns responding is a psychological win. For markets, every maneuver injects uncertainty that prices risk higher. The real cost, your wallet. Let's cut through the strategy and talk impact. How does 2 jets buzzing a ship halfway around the world touch you? Defense budgets. Every deployment eats budget. Budgets are funded by debt. Debt feeds inflation. Inflation cuts your paycheck's power. Trade costs. If shipping companies reroute or insurers hike premiums, corporations eat those costs short-term, but you pay long-term in higher prices. Commodities. Oil traders love a crisis. Volatility means profit, which means a provocative flyover can bump crude prices overnight. You see it when you fill your tank. Investor sentiment. Risk premiums ripple into equities. That means market dips, pension shakes, and 401k volatility, all triggered by a maneuver you never voted on. That's how geopolitics reaches straight into your pocket. Not with a missile strike, with a whisper of instability that forces the system to reprice everything you touch. The herd versus this player is the lie. Financial media will tell you this is a sideshow. Just noise. They'll say the Fed, inflation, and corporate earnings are what matter. But that's only half the truth. The other half is that markets are emotional herds. And herds spook easily. A low flyover becomes a global headline. A global headline becomes volatility. Volatility becomes opportunity for some and ruin for others. Smart players watch these moves like hawks. They know the next spike in oil, the next defense contract bump, the next shipping stock run might be born from a single provocative maneuver. Diversification doesn't save you here. Awareness and positioning do. Recap and call to action. So let's bring it home. Venezuelan F-16s buzzing a US destroyer isn't just saber rattling. It's a calculated economic move. It forces the US to spend. It rattles oil and shipping. It echoes Cold War and Red Sea playbooks. And it lands in your life as higher prices, shakier markets, and a debt tab you'll pay whether you wanted to or not. That's the why. That's the cost. And that's why you can't separate military muscle from financial fallout. They are 2 sides of the same battlefield. If you want more than headlines, if you want the truth behind the lies, stick with Wealth Directive. Subscribe now, because next, we're tearing into the boomer home ownership lie that's keeping you poor. Load the next round. The fight doesn't stop here.